Continuing the Heliotropium by Jeremias Drexilius, originally printed in 1627 in Latin. Heliotropium. What does it mean? Turning to Him, a conformity of the human will to the divine. And here very many persons deceive themselves through miserable ignorance, for they persuade themselves that only those evils which arise from natural causes, such as floods, earthquakes, landslides, barrenness, scarcity of corn, damage caused by the weather, troubles arising from disease, death, and the like, are inflicted by God, since in this case there very often is no sin which can be connected with the punishment, but that those evils which derive their origin from vice and human wickedness, as for example calumny, deceit, theft, treachery, wrong, oppression, war, murder, are not from God, and do not proceed from His providence, but from the wickedness and perverse will of those who devise such things as these against others. And hence those complaints so frequently in people's mouths of late, the scarcity of corn is not God's doing. It is caused by men immoderately greedy of gain, and not by God. Such ways of speaking are mad and impious. They are utterly unworthy of a Christian man, and should be banished to the shades below the earth. But in order to make my meaning as clear as possible, I will illustrate it by an example. Take the case of a man who wishes his neighbor to be stripped of all his goods, and who, in order to put this abominable design into execution, creeps secretly into the house of the man he hates, sets fire to it, and immediately hurries away. Presently, when the house is in flames, he runs to the spot with others, as if with the intention of helping to put out the fire, when all the while he is quite different. For if occasion serves, he does not try to keep the flames under, but collects spoils for himself, and secretly removes from the fire plunder to increase his own property. All such designs as these, regarded by themselves without perversity of will, and all such actions as these, considered in genere entius, as the schoolmen say, have God as their author. God brings these things about, just as He brings about other things, in creatures void of reason. For as these last can neither move nor do anything without God, so cannot the incendiary either enter a house or leave it again, or scatter fire in it, without God. But it does not follow that these several acts are evil in themselves, for they may also be compatible with virtue. But the will of the incendiary is evil. It is a most wicked design which that abandoned man has followed. And of this God is not the author and cause, although He has permitted this design to be carried out into execution. He might indeed have hindered it, if it had so pleased Him. Since, however, God by His own just judgment did not hinder that wicked design, that means He permitted it. The cause of His permission I shall give further on. The same line of reasoning holds good also in reference to other sins, and this may, perhaps, appear the clearer from the following example. Take the case of a man who is lame in consequence of a wound which he has received. He attempts to walk, it is true, but he moves over the ground with greater pain, and with more awkward gait than a sound man. Now the cause of motion in the foot is the natural impelling force, but the cause of lameness is the wound, not the moving power of the soul. And just in like manner, God is the cause of that act which any one performs when sinning. But the cause of error and sin in this act is man's free will. God supplies help to the act, but not to that wandering and departure from law and vicissitude. Although therefore God is not and cannot be the author of sin. For thy eyes are too pure to behold evil, and thou canst not look on iniquity. Habakkuk 1:13. Thou hast loved justice and hated iniquity. Psalms 44:8. Yet it is, nevertheless, most certain that all the evil punishment arising from second causes, whether rational or irrational, in whatever way or for whatever reason it may happen, proceeds entirely from the hand of God, and from his most benign disposal and providence. It is God, my good friend, it is God, I say, who guided the hand of him who struck you. It is God who moved the tongue of him who slandered you. It is God who supplied strength to him who wickedly trampled you underfoot. God himself, speaking of himself by the mouth of Isaiah, declares, chapter 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, that do all these things. And how completely does the prophet Amos confirm this when he says, chapter 3:6, shall there be evil in a city which the Lord hath not done? Just as if he had said, there is no evil which God does not do, by permitting the evil of guilt, and by ordaining the working out the evil of punishment. Thus God, intending to punish the adultery and murder of King David by the sin of his incestuous son Absalom, says, 2 Kings 12:2-12, behold, I will rise up evil against thee out of thy own house, and I will take thy wives before thy eyes, and give them to thy neighbor, and he shall lie with thy wives in the sight of this son. For thou didst it in secretly, but I will do these things in the sight of all of Israel, and in the sight of the sun. Admirably has St. Augustine said, in this way God instructs good men by means of evil ones. Thus it is that the divine justice makes wicked kings and princes its instruments, as well for exercising the patience of good men as for chastising the forwardness of bad. Examples of this are ready at hand for every age, in cases where God works out his own good pleasure through the wicked designs of others, and by means of the injustice of others displays his own just judgments. And the just as a father seizes a rod and strikes his child, but a little while afterwards throws the rod into the fire and becomes reconciled to the child. So God threatens by Isaiah and says, chapter 10:5-6, woe to the Assyrian! He is the rod and the staff of my anger, and my indignation is in their hands. I will send him to a deceitful nation, and I will give him a charge against the people of my wrath, to take away the spoils and to lay hold on the prey, and to read them down like the mire of the streets. But he shall not take it so, and his heart shall not think so, but his heart shall be set to destroy and to cut off nations, not a few. How plainly does God declare himself to be the author of such great evils. My indignation, he says, is in their hands. The rod of my fury is the king of Assyria, for punishing the abominable wickedness of the Jews. I have sent him that he should carry away spoils and should bring down the surpassingly insolent and inflated minds of those who have cast aside their faith and worshipped the idols of the Gentiles with a mad service. But the king of Assyria himself will have far different thoughts, and will not come to chastise, but to slay, and utterly destroy them. But when I have chastened my people by the Assyrians, then woe to this rod, woe to the Assyrians, for as the instrument of my anger will I cast them into the fire. The same may also be observed to other divine chastisements. Titus, the Roman emperor, when he had shut up Jerusalem with the closest siege, determined upon making the circuit of the walls and examining everything with his own eyes. When he saw the trenches full of dead bodies and a deep stream of corruption flowing from the decaying corpses, he groaned aloud and raising his hand and eyes towards heaven, called God to witness that this was not his work.